And welcome in. It's Milky Way Wednesday, kind of live. Okay, it's not even really kind of. Right now, hopefully, you are chatting over here in the chat window. Okay, it's not exactly right here. As you can see on my frame here, no text at all. Nothing on this screen, at least that I can see. But you should be seeing right there on your side. If you turn down a button somewhere down here, you can see the live chat, and then you can see those who are watching with you of the premiere. So basically, I've had these set up to record, or not really record, but to release at 7 p.m. Mountain Time on Wednesday. And that is in advance of Wednesday. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Let me say this better. I'm recording in advance of Wednesday so that you guys can be a part of a Milky Way Wednesday together with my lesson element, or I won't be able to answer any questions live, but I will be able to teach this, and we're going to go over it kind of a course. It's going to be an interesting short course of all the Milky Way photography basics, the stuff that I have taught over the years. And there's going to be 6 weeks, 6 weeks of pre-recorded live pre-recorded Milky Way Wednesdays, where I am going to record like this, release it to you at 7 p.m., where during the half hour that you're watching, you can type and chat together like old Milky Way Wednesdays, or a live typical Milky Way Wednesday, but you won't have me. You won't have me. All right, so if you're watching this recorded for the first time, welcome to Milky Way Wednesday. It's typically a live session, and right now it is just a release from my YouTube channel. So welcome in, everybody. It is Wednesday. I'm Aaron King with Photog Adventures, and we're going to talk Milky Way photography and all of the basics. I still have over here my controls so that I can make sure everything works well together. And we're going to talk about 4 videos, 2-minute tips that I did a few years ago about the Milky Way. Let me show you right here. Over on my YouTube channel, you'll see that I have my recent uploads. These are recent Milky Way Wednesdays that have gone out. You'll see that I say replay. In fact, I need to edit this and say, hey, that's live. That's not live anymore. That's a replay. Well, here are my 2-minute Milky Way tips. And these 2-minute Milky Way tips, I'm going to feature the lessons from them and then expand on them in these Milky Way Wednesdays. Today, we'll be tackling what lens is best for Milky Way photography, how do I choose shutter length, what ISO setting is the best, and is that Milky Way in focus. And then next week, you're going to watch me talk about miscellaneous settings on your camera to think about. The Milky Way is not blue, so what color balance should you choose? What are some of the best practices as you're capturing? What are some things to think about when you're actually capturing your image, as well as some 5 favorite composition tips. And then the following week will be the last 4 of these lessons. And these are 2-minute tips that I recorded back in 2018 or 2019. And these went by, they basically taught a lot in a fast 2 minutes. And so I'm going to go through those lessons. In fact, let me look at these notes. That's 8 videos right there. And then here's the last 4 videos. Or, you know what, I should talk about the fact that the last 4 videos are split up into 2. So we're going to have an entire week dedicated to lens, shutter, ISO focus, an entire week dedicated to miscellaneous settings, color balance, capture practices, and composition. Then we'll have a week dedicated to knowledge, location, moon, and clouds, which you're seeing right here. Knowledge of the Milky Way, blasted moon, location planning, and then how do you figure out the clouds are in your way. Then I'll have a week where I'll go over my specific Milky Way planning with a PhotoPills app and using the Planet app. So you're going to learn, you've had a lot of Planet lessons recently, and I haven't mentioned Photoshop in detail, so we'll just go over those basics again real quick about how to plan with both of these to go out for a Milky Way shot. Then the last 2 weeks, in the last 2 weeks of July, because this is going to go, June 22nd, June 29th, July 6th, July 13th, July 20th is 6 weeks in. No, did I do that right? 22nd, 29th, 6th, 13th, and the 20th is the 5th weekend, and then the 27th is the 6th weekend. So August 3rd, I'll be live again with you. August 3rd. And the last 2 weeks, I'm going to talk about pano, capturing a pano, capturing single image photography, capturing dual image photography, and I'm catching... My head is not clear on everything. And then the final week, we'll be talking about stacking your images to get better quality with stacking and tracking. Okay, all right, got that chore out of the way of just commenting on everything that's coming ahead. That full schedule is written down below. You'll see that in the description. Here's the first paragraph about what's going on this time, and then below that you'll see that the coming up Milky Way Wednesdays are all of these discussions. So there's 6 lessons about the basics of Milky Way photography that if you haven't caught up to all of these yet, now's your chance. And so, welcome into Milky Way Wednesday. Let's get started right off the bat with talking about our lens. So I'm going to pull up that lens video, and we are going to watch this together a whole 2 minutes, and then I'll jump in and give you some more expansion on it. The first thing you're looking for is an aperture of f2.8 or greater. Check out this shot of my Rokinon. As you're looking at the aperture change from f22 all the way back down to f1.4, you can see how much awesome space there is in that light bucket of a lens to capture as much light in and get to the sensor without having to bring up my ISO too much to amplify the existing light. So when you're looking at your lenses, choose something that's f2.8 or greater. f1.4 is this Rokinon, and it is fantastic. Let's talk about the second thing, the focal length of your lens. That focal length choice is basically you're going to be as wide as possible from fisheye to about 50 millimeter. Those are your best ranges. What if I'm concerned about getting a zoom? Should I avoid zoom lenses? Heavens no. The fact that my Rokinon is better than my Tamron is not because it's just a prime versus a zoom question. While prime is fantastic, has high quality, and it will give you really great quality glass and clarity on the Milky Way, if this was an f3.5 and prime versus a zoom 2.8, the one I'd go with instantly is the f2.8. Lastly, you might look at this Rokinon and say, this doesn't have any autofocus. If no autofocus, this is going to be a frustrating lens to have in my bag. Well, for Milky Way photography, you are always going to be in manual focus. Look at your lenses. What do you have? Do you only have a 50 millimeter that's f1.8 or 1.4 or 1.2? Then go with the 50 millimeter. You will have to do a panorama, so stay tuned for a later video where I'm going to talk about panoramas, and you guys can get out there with a fantastic lens for Milky Way. You don't even have to go and buy a new one so long as you have something that fits in this category, f2.8 or greater, and it's going to be something from fisheye to 50 millimeter. Anything in that range is gonna be solid for Milky Way photography. All right, so before I go into my, okay, let's end and say goodbye, go check this out, blah, blah, blah. That is the quick version of saying, okay, basically any lens that has a solid aperture, you're going to be stoked about it. Now, considering a wide angle versus telephoto, you've seen many Star Trek images that are just fantastic when they focus right in and key in on like the Rho Ophiuchi above a subject, Orion above a subject, the Milky Way core just above a subject. Just about any lens is going to work for you as long as it has a very big and wide open aperture. As you look at this and see how large that is, and there's my face, it focused on my face through the lens. That's awesome. This is a nice and wide aperture. And then I showed you a comparison kind of with a 50 millimeter. You can see them and they're different sizes. This is f1.8. This is f1.4. See how the Rokinon is performing so dang well? If you can get a nice sharp one where you're in focus, this one right now, I've beaten the blank out of it, and it is no longer holding a good focus for me. I need to get it calibrated or something or another, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to buy a new lens. It's so cheap. I'll buy a new one, a fresh one with everything nice and clean. But you can see just the gigantic opening that it is compared to the 50 millimeter, even though this is an f1.8. Sometimes the f1.8 isn't necessarily talking about the width or diameter of this opening, but you can see a dramatic difference in specific glass and notice that. But it's like for the sense of light being brought in, an f1.8 is the size of this 50. And any time you can use a lens that has a wider and more open aperture and perform well with good focus and clarity, then you'll want to use that lens. Zoom or prime. Prime's always going to be solid glass, but a zoom can be great. That lens right there is a 15 to 30 zoom. I used it for many pictures. In fact, my favorite one that I've ever captured, just because the conditions were so good, became great because of those conditions and what the focus of the subject was with that lens, a zoom. Prime, better, zoom, kind of worse in a way. Focus better, not as great on there. This one's f2.8. This one is 1.4. That one's f2.8. And yet that one has my favorite image of all time. So my goal in these little 2-minute tips is to basically let everyone feel at ease that here's the minimum that you need to master to do well. And then beyond that, when you know your camera better, when you know your lenses better, you'll make some little pixel peeping decisions as you look at your product and how it turns out and go, okay, that lens is not as solid in the corners as this lens. The coma aberration is an issue. You know what? I hate stopping down to f2. I really like having it be f1.4. I'm going to go for a lens that is great at native f1.4. And then you go for it. And that's going to be testing your own gear out. But as long as you are worried about things, stop being worried and be glad that you've got yourself a solid piece of gear if it's f2.8 or greater, okay? So that is the lens discussion. Let's go into the next discussion, because as the lens discussion solved, you're basically solving your aperture. Because you go into a Milky Way shot for the first time, you're like, okay, what should my aperture be? What should my shutter setting be? What ISO should I be at? And then what else do I need to do to make sure I don't mess up my image? We're answering the aperture question just by deciding on what lens to use. With that lens, I'm f2.8. With this lens, wide open, I'm actually f1.4, stop down to f2. I like to go to f2 to fix the coma aberration. With this lens, I hate focusing with this lens. It's the Canon Nifty 50. It's an STM lens, and it's terrific for filming, but not, and for taking pictures of my kids, but I hate it for Milky Way. I hate it. Just hate it so dang much. Just so ridiculous how hard it is to get focus with this guy. I never expected that. So that made a consideration for me that this is my favorite, second favorite, and I need to buy another lens. So let's go into our discussion now about shutter. Right here with shutter, your major goal is to avoid the star trailing that you don't like. Well, what do? Is the answer going to be the 500 rule, the 600 rule, the 400 rule? Which rule rules them all? It's none of them. The rule that you and I need to use is the MPF rule. So you get your PhotoPills app out. Spot Stars is going to answer us what the MPF rule is. In short, the MPF rule is taking the consideration of what your lens is at, the f-stop, the focal length, and whether or not it's on a camera body that is a Canon 5D Mark IV. If I went by the 500 rule, man, look at this, 21 seconds. The MPF rule tells me with this camera, with this lens at f2, I should go for 4.57 seconds. Can you believe it? You will get star trailing as fast as that if you have my exact same setup. Imagine thinking that you're going to capture in only 4.5 seconds. That's a little short. The ISO you would have to bring it up to account for that short of a shot would be way too much work. So what we're going to do is add a little bit on top of the MPF rule. In my situation, it's been about 4 seconds. You can take that as your beginner's rule of thumb to just get you started. You'll be safe with the little 4 extra seconds plus whatever the MPF rule tells you. Let me show you an example of this lens capturing a shot at my typical length of 8 seconds versus a 15-second rule. And you can already see that there is a complete difference in the clarity of the stars. Let's zoom in even more. Zoomed in right on the row of Fuki, you can see my 8 seconds on the left, my 15 seconds on the right, and you can tell there's something up. 30 seconds versus 8 seconds. You can see it immediately how different it looks at 30 seconds. Thanks again for watching. I'm Aaron King. I hope you will join us over at the Milky Way Photographers Guild, and if you want to check out my course, the link is still down below. Thanks again. See you guys tomorrow with our discussion on okay, going too long. I was going into my discussion about my course, but it's still available. In fact, the crazy thing is I opened it up on discount from $97 down to $30, and I decided I can't sell all of that at that price, 1/3 of the cost. So I went ahead and limited it to only 200 people. 200 people, and then I would go back to $97, and I haven't hit that yet. Just for the sake of intrigue, and let's see where it's currently at. Just go to the description in the chat right here. I think that's going to help me. Go to the description. Where is the description? More. I kept overlooking the more. All right, here we go. This is the link I wanted to show you. Let's see where we're at. So this was the $30 only and 173 of 200. Okay, so I'm only 17? No, that's bad math. 27 away from moving it back up to $97. Okay, cool. Awesome. I'm just surprised. I thought in 2020 COVID, that it would be something to be picked up. You know, we're at home, we're working on stuff, and it did sell quite a bit. We got 173, but not, the numbers I thought I was going to get. So I'm still got that discount, by the way. So that's what I was talking about in the video, is that discount. Let's go back to this video and focus on another feature. I don't know if I missed the beard. Do I miss the beard? I kind of missed the beard. I liked it. But I don't know if I should go back to it. I'm kind of a real bum. So looking at this MPF rule, let's just talk about that shortly. And I'm going to go to my reflector to show my iPad. So let's bring this window in a little bit. There we go. So now it's blocked my iPad entirely. On the iPad, if you have photo pills, you'll see it like this. On your phone, you'll see a much more narrow menu, but you'll be able to scroll down until you see spot stars right here. And that spot stars pill lets you go into the MPF rule. It talks about taking into account the megapixel of your camera. It also takes into account the sensor of your camera and size of the sensor, and then all that math crunches when it would actually start star trailing for your specific camera. Mine is set for an EOS 5D Mark IV, and using this Rokinon at 24mm, stopped down to f2.0. With that information and wanting to have accurate stars, because you can choose barely noticeable trails if you want to give yourself some time. You click this back down to accurate, and you'll see, okay, all right, I am given on the 500 rule, the old rule, 21 seconds. You can go 21 seconds without trailing. You probably noticed that it's not totally true, and not true at all. And this is going to say barely 5 seconds for the MPF rule. And as I was talking about, I would just recommend adding 4 seconds onto whatever it says. And that'll give you a barely noticeable trail, and it will also give you more opportunity to run the shutter longer and not have to bring your ISO up so high. What we're going to talk about in this next video is the ISO choice that you're going to make. And once you have your aperture and once you have your shutter decided, the ISO kind of gets decided for you with trial and error with pictures on location. And so I at least want to go into 9 seconds, right? So with this lens this lens on that camera, I have gone from I'll go accuracy back to accurate. 4 seconds plus 4 is 8. I've tried it at 8 and I love it at 8. It turns out fantastic at 8. How fast could Aaron pull up a picture? It's not a Milky Way Wednesday if you don't spend a little bit of time waiting for Aaron to show you a picture. Huh? Ooh. Not so bad. This picture was taken with 8-second ISO. This picture was taken with 8-second ISO, 8-second shutter. This picture right here, the one I was telling you about, my favorite picture of all time, is 8 seconds on the sky and 1 minute on the foreground. So 8 seconds is enough to get a good, actual quality capture of the sky. I believe this wasn't 8 seconds because it was that lens, as I believe this is more wide, but I'm not entirely remembering. I'm not entirely certain. But this one was for sure 8 seconds. So was this and that. So then there's a consideration of I want to get a good exposure on my Milky Way, and I'm afraid of making it too much of a trailing shot. Don't worry, especially when you're doing a panorama. At 4 more seconds on top of your MPF rule, you're going to be golden. You're going to have it just right, and it's going to work out terrifically. So we mentioned that third rule. So I don't accidentally forget to turn on my audio. I'm going to leave it on this whole time, and I'll try not to talk over myself too much. You decided what lens to use. You decided how much shutter you could handle. But now, guess what? ISO gets decided for you. It's by your histogram. So you just need to add a little ISO until you get the proper histogram. This is what your histogram should look like. What you are going to want to make sure is that you have a separation between the black and the midtones of the sky. You don't want them crunched together. So if you have this peak because it's so black in your foreground like I typically do, and you see it there next to the rest of the hump, you're going to want to make sure that they get some separation. So you see the peak, you pull up your ISO until there's separation here, but then how far else do you go? Do you bring that histogram all the way to here? Do you bring the histogram to here? Where do you go? This histogram is going to go and spike and then come back down towards the midpoint. This is the midpoint right there. That midpoint of the histogram is a perfect spot for you to bring that histogram to. Here's a shot, 8 seconds, 1600 ISO. Is it exposed well? No. Is this one good? It's still crunched to the left, but I'm starting to see separation between the black and the part of the sky. That's good, and that's at 3200 ISO. Here at 5000 ISO, is it enough? No, the separation is there, but the hump is definitely not hitting me right down in that center. 6400 ISO, the hump is getting very close to the center, but it's not there yet. ISO 8000, and then I see it touching the middle. Ooh, yes, that's when I say,
man, that histogram is great.
8000 ISO is the perfect one for my lens at 8 seconds, ISO 8000. What will it be for your lens? What will it be for your shutter choice? Watch that histogram and get that shot well exposed. If you're back for day 3, thank you so much for watching. And if you click subscribe and like, I love you. Thank you so much for doing that. Keep coming back for more. I hope you will join us over at the Milky Way Photography. I keep letting myself go too long, but at least you heard me say that I love you. I do love you guys. I love you all for coming. I love everybody for coming. You're the best for showing up to all these Milky Way Wednesdays. So I want to go to this part specifically. I don't need this after that. That is going to be the annoying part of these videos, is I'm going to take my headphones off and on. But I have to listen to what you're hearing, otherwise I'll go too long, like I've done anyway. And looking at the histogram, looking at the histogram and the ISO choice, just understand that I've already made the decisions of what lens to use and what aperture to leave it at. I've already made the decision that I'm going for 8 seconds. And so while I could decide to go longer on my seconds and change which ISO performance I get, that is always going to be true. I am looking at a raw image as well. Maybe your camera is ISO invariant. Mine's not. My Canon is not. And so maybe you can shoot like at 4000 ISO and have a much better performance than this raw image is showing. It's not something that is a hard, fast rule and can never be broken. What it is a great starting point with an unknown photographer, a photographer who is a little bit uneducated with their gear. And so I want to guide you with that in mind, that maybe your gear can handle a different ISO. You just need to practice with it. And so when you come on a workshop with me, you'll actually be out there looking at the Milky Way, and I'll say, okay, choose your histogram. Do you like what's looking at? Okay, great. All right, let's look at your histogram together. Okay, I recommend, let's just push up the 6400 ISO. I know you don't like to do that typically. Let's push it up and see what it's like. And now let's capture a 6400 and 8001 and then go back to yours again. And then you can compare them on your computer at home and see which one was easier to work with. Sometimes if you go so low and you have to push it in post, you bring out more noise than you would have if you had just captured at 6400 ISO. I know that's what you were worried about. I know that's why you didn't use 6400 in the first place, because, well, the noise, I don't want the noise, and it's not worth pushing away from. It's not worth ignoring the potential of getting that great capture in camera and not having to push up so much in your post-processing that you add noise. If your camera is ISO invariant and it doesn't add that much noise, whether you capture at 3200 or 6400, then awesome. Use what you need to use to make it work. I've once heard Alan Wallace talk about his ISO, and he described it this way. Yes, he can capture at 3200 ISO, maybe even 1600 sometimes. And then ISO invariant, he can just up it in post and he's fine. But when he's at the camera, he can't really see what he's capturing before he's worked on it in post. And so he tends to shoot a little bit higher just so that he can see it. on the back of his camera. He likes seeing what's captured on the back of the camera. He's not getting too much noise. He's happy with it still. So even though he's ISO invariant, he will sometimes, or possibly at that one time he was saying he always does, but I won't speak to always. I won't speak on his behalf with always. But sometimes he will shoot with the higher ISO so that he can avoid not being able to see on the back of his LCD screen what he's captured, and that he's got everything in that he wants in there, and that it looks awesome. I captured 8,000 ISO. I start there and go up to 10,000 with this camera lens. And so things are different per gear, per everything. But this is a good example right here of what to look for. Let me just hit play on this video, and you can see how I show the example of the histogram all the way far over here on the left, and it just kind of creeps out from the left. And you start to see what you need to see with this histogram right here. The one that you saw me drawing on just barely, where I featured that it has finally broken this midpoint right here, and that foot is just peeking over it. If it comes up beyond it too much, you don't have to push it that far. What if the shape is like this, Aaron, and it was this really long? Well, you've got a funny capture of maybe a scene with some smoke, or something's pulling back all those midtones of the core, because you should have a greater spike of mid-tone colors. And so if you don't, just trust that maybe there's something else going on in the sky, and you don't need to push it all the way up with the foot that far. Just get yourself just beyond that midpoint and you're good. You can keep it that low and watch what happens with it. So let's see this 3200 ISO. My midpoint is right here, and I'm not even close, but I am starting to get the separation. What was that separation? This is a spike of absolute black foreground. What, Aaron? What happens if I do a low-level lighting? You won't see a spike of black like this, not nearly as much. Sometimes with low-level lighting, if you've already turned it on before you're testing your histogram, you'll basically see a shape like this. It's kind of like there is no, let me make that even brighter. There is no spike of black. It's kind of all part of the same amoeba that is your histogram mid-tone colors, because your foreground, there's nothing too black or too dark depending on the subject. You might still have plenty of shadow side of rocks, shadow side of trees, or you have so many lights that everything now is lit up in some way and nothing is black. You know how your histogram, these are the blacks. This is your mid-tones, Let's see. Nice spelling, Aaron, and nice writing. Right to here, and then up here is your whites. To put it simply, your whites on the far right, your midtones in the middle, and your blacks on the far left. That's putting it very simply. Let me just get rid of all of that. And you can see that black spike exists because you have black in your frame. If you don't have any black in your frame, you won't see it. What if you point this at another part of the Milky Way band and not the core? Well, you won't have as pronounced of a midtone section. All of this midtone right here is shooting at that brighter spot of your core. This core that's right behind me, right here, is going to give you that. If you cut off some of this core, you'll have a little bit different histogram. If you don't shoot the core at all and you're capturing over here, you won't see that pronounced of a midtone because you're missing all the bright spot of the core. So this requires that you're capturing that core section right here in like the middle of your frame, and you take a test shot, and then you see this histogram. And then you see a histogram that reveals, okay, my midtone is hanging out right there, just left of the midpoint, but my foot is reaching over it. I'm getting just beyond it. It's working, it's working. So let's go back to the video and watch that change. 5,000 ISO, it's underneath. At 6,400, you'll see that it actually doesn't go even there either. It's just shy of it, but I do have good separation and a pretty good midtone. I could stop there if I wanted, but at 8,000 ISO, I got it. I was there. It's what I wanted, and I could see it. And oh yeah, go back to that section right there. Let's look back at that shot. And it comes up just in a second, right? Or did I not go far enough back? Pause. Oh, I see. Play and pause. All right, so this is the back of my camera. You can see I'm at ISO 8,000, 8 seconds. You can't see my f-stop because it's a Rokinon lens. It's not communicating to my camera what f-stop it is at, but I can tell you it's at f2. Always is, so it's hard for me to even be wrong there. This is my hump that I'm seeing. You know, I don't get the benefit of that Lightroom line right here. I don't see that, but I do know that it's roughly the middle right here, and I've crossed it. I'm almost touching that other line, so I know I've crossed the middle for sure. And that's how it looks on mine. And pay attention to the fact that this is the luminosity histogram. It's not an RGB histogram where I see the red, green, and the blue. I'm seeing just the white silhouette, and that's what you want to look for on the back of your camera. So if you don't know where to see a picture you've taken and see what the histogram was, make sure you figure that out before you go, that you can check that histogram and know for sure. And don't turn on your lights yet until you've taken the shot that tests that histogram, okay? So before you turn your low-level lighting on, just test run your exposure. And you got the core nice and visible right there, so capture away. You'll see that blackness of the foreground have a spike. You'll see it separate from the midtones, and you'll see the hump do what you want and reach that midpoint, and you know you got something. You got it solid. All right, let's go to the last video of today's Milky Way Wednesday. This is my Carson LumiLoop. Right here above of this is a link, a quick text link, so you can go watch that focus video right now. But this is my #1 tip for getting great focus when I'm doing Milky Way photography. I take this because it has a plastic cup. It keeps it perfect distance from it. Flush right up against my LCD screen. And then I tweak it until I get the perfect focus. There's one more tip that I want to give you tonight, and it is one that if you have really good vision and you can see dots on the back of your LCD screen, this is going to be a quick tip to help you know, oh wow, okay, I can see the dots, I'm out of focus. Check out this clip of me in Escalante explaining it right there on scene. There's a way you can quickly see the difference on the back of your screen, even if you're not sure if you quite nailed the focus. Look at the difference. Can you notice the difference between them? This is just slightly out of focus, and yet I can tell immediately that I missed. And what is it that's giving it away? It's the brighter magnitude stars. Are there too many dots? If you start to see the stars as more than just a sea of specks of sand, but you start to see the brightest magnitude stars standing out, that's when you know you're out of focus. As I go more out of focus, watch how the brighter magnitude stars start to pop off the screen. And then here's even greater out of focus. It's so obvious when you look at it this way. If you're seeing a whole sea of stars, but there's standouts, if you have a lot of standouts, if you have just a few, look at this image. This one, you can see that there's definitely a few that stand out that are really bright. Antares, the planets, obvious ones, they're standing out. Back here, though, when I go over, there's a sea of them from corner to corner, middle, far left, far right. So if you have too many dots, that means the brightest magnitude stars are standing out. And when those brightest magnitude stars stand out, you know it's gone a little too far on the out of focus range. So try again. Awesome. Thank you for watching yet another 2-minute tip. I want to emphasize. All right, shush, Sharon. Okay, we got it. All right, so my best friend, Mr. Carson LumiLoop. And I'm really curious. Let's do something real quick. Let's test something because if you go to Amazon.com and do a search for Carson LumiLoop, if you spell it correctly, you'll see that right now what used to be $4.99 is $8.99. Inflation has affected even the Carson LumiLoop. Of course, it's affected everything, but it is actually the most expensive I've ever seen it right now. But this is a very cheap, very inexpensive tool for you to add to your bag. And adding it to your bag is as easy as this. You know, it's so simple. Obviously, throwing it at it is not necessarily an example of how simple it is. It's just it's light. You have no trouble bringing it with you wherever you go, and if it happens to break or get scratched up too much, then you buy another one. Oh, I shouldn't have thrown that. So a reminder that this is very simple to use. If you have your camera, in fact, let me return the lens from whence it came. This right here is the process that you use the LumiLoop. And I showed you over there, flush up against the plastic. I'm telling you, when you have the back of your LCD screen and you move this cup on there, you don't want to hover it. You want it flush on there. Don't hover the plastic cup. Make it flush. And then while it's flush up there, you just need to look at it. And when this is on a tripod, it's a lot easier than I'm going to make it look right here. But with one hand holding this over the star, your other hand is working the focus. And that's it. You got yourself in focus. Now, people ask me all the time at workshops, okay, Aaron, can you... Oh, I just put a fingerprint on my lens. Well done, King. Aaron, it's out of focus, isn't it? Look. I can't look at a picture, and you won't be able to either, and say, that's out of focus, unless it's really out of focus. When it's almost in focus, it's hard to tell. For instance, look at these examples that I'm popping around, where I'm going in and out of focus from them with the too many dots example. Oh, I'm still wearing the headphones. Oh, that's going to be annoying. But go to the screen. Oh, there he is, the man with the beard. What's up, Aaron King's Nick Page wannabe lookalike time? Okay, so this is the image right here. Oh, that's image 3. Where's the one that's in focus? I guess it starts on image 2. Down below, you can see image 2. And then it goes a little bit out of focus. So from there to there, that's so minor. There to there. There to there. It's a very minor difference in focus. It's not like we're talking about jumping from here to here. Oh, to here. So here to here. Here to here. Oh, man, I flubbed it on the last try. There to there. I mean, that is quite a big difference and obvious if you look in your camera that that's out of focus. The part that's hard is when you're looking at from here to there. That's when it gets challenging. Am I in or out? And the too many dots thing is so great on the back of your LCD screen. Look at this smaller image. And when you're looking at the too many dots from image 1, 3 to 2, you can see how the Scorpius constellation, hidden right there, becomes visible in 3. Right here. So really visible, 3 stars going down, curling around. But in 3 or 2, not so much. In 3, it starts to pop. 2, not so much. 3 starts to pop. And so what I tell people is, like, I can't just look at your image and say that it's in or out of focus. I have to look at the picture you've taken. So what I'll have them do is say, hey, look, if you want me to check your focus, I'm going to have to do the focus for you because I need to see it go in and out. What you're going to do is you're going to go in and out and see it go out of focus and back in, out and back in, and then find that tiny little perfect moment within a range that it's at tightest as possible of a weird shaped orb as it can be. If you're close and you're wondering if it's right, take a picture and then check your focus again and take a picture. And then compare those 2 pictures. Look at the picture that you've taken and the one that you've taken and fixed afterwards. Did the many, many dots kind of disappear? Did they go back into image number 2 where they're just a little bit more, a little bit more clean? Where's the perfectly focused one? So there's image number 1. Do I go into image number 2 from here? I do. So here's perfectly in focus. And 2 is entirely out of focus. But I've been using 2 as the example of a good one, right? You can see that difference really clear on the back of your LCD screen. And so when you're there and you think you're close, take a picture and then go for a really fine-tune, double check, really be smart. Hold your breath if you have to really tweak that right, and then take the picture again and see if you've improved your focus at all with an A-B back and forth on the back of your LCD screen. And what you're looking for is, does this start to show too many dots? If it does, you're out. If it doesn't, and it all kind of fades into like a thin, like everything is a grain of sand all blended together with a few bright spots, then you know you got it. Hopefully that makes sense. It's hard for that to make sense without you seeing it on the back of your LCD screen, but you should see everything very uniform. If stars start to pop out and the brighter magnitude stars are kind of filling the screen from edge to edge, top to bottom, you see dot, 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 you've got it wrong. But when you see everything just kind of, well, there's some dots, 1 or 2 to 7, but not really a dot every inch, then you know you've got yourself in focus. You want to see everything kind of smooth out without an obvious set of dots, unless it's a planet. You want that to be your focus, not your focus like this. All right, hope that makes sense. It's challenging to do. It's going to take some real effort to actually look and see what happens. And if you want to see this on your camera, I recommend getting yourself in focus to the point that you're really happy with. Then just bring it out of focus a little bit, take a picture. Then bring it out of focus a little bit more and take a picture again, and then bring it out of focus entirely and see that picture. And then just stop it on the way back. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going until you see your sea of dots give way to just smooth, buttery sands. I say sands because every sand granule looks similar, uniform. If you have a bunch of gravel on top of the sand, the gravel stands out. So image number 2 is an example where there's like 30 to 50 pieces of gravel on top of a beach. When you get it down to focus number 1, it's a uniform beach with a rock or two here or there. That's what I'm trying to get at. I hope that makes sense. I hope it does. Let's go back to the main ticker. So we have taken at least a half an hour. In fact, I think longer, 40 minutes for tonight's Milky Way Wednesday. Thanks for joining me and talking with your friends in the chat. I hope the chat that I'm not seeing has been active and that you've been talking to each other and that you've enjoyed talking to each other despite the fact that I'm not there and able to, interact with you and have fun with it typically like I do. But thanks for joining me for Milky Way Wednesday. I'm Aaron King. I'll be back next week and we'll be talking about what again? We'll be talking about miscellaneous settings, the color balance setting, capture practices while you're capturing an image, and composition. I'll be wearing the same shirt because I'll be recording it right now. I'll see you all next week. Enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy the Milky Way right now because I am in Oregon right now enjoying Milky Way. What, Wednesday night? I'm going to be in Brookings at Secret Beach. Woohoo! So I'm going to be enjoying some Milky Way skies. I hope you do too. Have a good one. See you later.